All right, macro perspective peeps. Thanks so much for being here, taking a listen. We've got a great guest today. As you guys know, with our podcast, we cover all facets of fitness, health and wellness, not just fitness, but also all the way down to finance, whether that's in your business, spiritual health, and all these things. Today, we've got a great guest, Mike Bledsoe. I've been listening to Mike for actually a pretty long time with his podcast, Barbell Shrugged. I know he had another project called The Strong Coach, and today I think we're going to be talking about his new project called the Sovereignty.codes. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Really look forward to diving into it. But Mike, would you mind kind of introducing yourself, a little bit about your story, where you've been, where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. It's hard not to start at the beginning because it was strange and I've been weird a long time. But I was homeschooled and all the way through. Served some time in the Navy. Started going to college after the Navy. Thought business school would be a good idea. Hated it. Discovered there was a program called Exercise and Sports Science. And I go, oh, I'll switch over to that. Had a great time in school after that. Got into weightlifting. And then discovered CrossFit when my Navy buddies came to town and introduced it to me in 2006. And so I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen as a weightlifter. I was like, why are you doing everything so fast? And so fast forward 6 months later, I thought I'd give it a shot because back in 2006, 07, there wasn't a lot of weightlifting competitions. So I figured I'd screw around with a little bit of CrossFit, did one workout, loved it. I go, oh, I got to find where the gym is at nearby, thinking it had to be there. And of course, no one had opened one. So I opened up a gym, had no aspirations of being a business owner whatsoever. And I suffered because of that for the first year and a half. And then I decided to be a business owner. And so between the years of 2009 and 2013, ran a really successful CrossFit gym, helped open a second one, then started a podcast called Barbell Shrugged, which climbed the very short ranks of podcasting to number one for quite a while in fitness and nutrition on iTunes. We accumulated a couple 100,000 people on YouTube talking about fitness. Also started a podcast about business, teaching gym owners how to run their businesses. And then in early 2018, I ended up leaving that company altogether. I actually was really tired of only talking about deadlifts and pull-ups and all that stuff. And so I had no idea what I was going to do when I left Barbell Shrugged. I thought I wasn't going to work for a whole year. I ended up only taking off 6 months. And then I spent the second 6 months of 2018 opening 3 different coaching businesses, one for mindset, another one for emotional development, and another one for business development for coaches. Within a year, I let go of the mindset and the emotional development programs and allowed the co-founders to continue running those. Those were Training Camp for the Soul and Enlifted. And I just ran Strong Coach primarily because it was easy to do that. It was just like, oh, I'll teach people how to coach people online. That's super simple. And I was in a phase of my life where I wanted more relaxation. And Strong Coach has now run its course. And I am doing a little bit of one-on-one consulting with influencers to monetize their audiences. And I'm consulting a few different businesses on things. And now I'm discussing jumping into a business partnership for a media company and brick and mortar here in Austin, Texas as well. So a lot of irons in the fire and being really happy and getting a lot of creativity out of helping so many diverse people and different businesses and industries.
Yeah. So all the shows that are listed on shrugcollective.com, are those all the ones that you kind of have like a tie to still, or is that all the ones from the past? Or
So just from
What
the
is that?
past, so basically from 2018 to present, it was really 2019 when I really left the business. I was still running.
Okay.
I was still an owner all throughout 2018 and just lightly having a touch on it and giving them a little bit of guidance. But basically starting spring of 2018, I was no longer on the show. So I haven't been on the show in 5 years. Anders Varner took over
Yep.
in my place. And yeah.
Gotcha. So you're the strong coach one, right? With that one, that project specifically, that one you do have like a podcast associated with it too,
I
or
did. There was
you
a
did?
podcast, and I'm just not even really running that anymore either.
Gotcha.
So,
So you
yeah,
just kind of like left the presenting to a theoretical audience phase of your life. It's like you've been such an OG that you're like, I'm on to just consulting. What does that look like?
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, the truth is I'm not incredibly passionate about solving a single problem like I used to be.
Mhm.
And so, which is very necessary if you want to run a successful business, is you want to solve one problem for one person, one type of person. Uh, and so now, I mean, I guess the problem I solve is I help people who are having a hard time turning, their businesses into the amount of money that they know they should make. So now I'm finding a lot of joy in helping other people achieve their mission. So my mission
Okay.
is to help other people achieve their missions, who I think are doing good things in the world.
Love that. Yeah, that's I mean, almost 2 decades into it, right? I feel like the niche that you're going to be in is going to evolve and change over time, and something you spent so much time into, whether it was like again the CrossFit space or a podcasting space. I mean, at some point, I feel like you do outgrow something. So I think you know you were you've been in a lot of booms. It sounds like you were in like the golden age of a lot of um, niche items. Is like how I can kind of perceive it on the outside looking in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'm pretty good at spotting trends, and I was fortunate to catch both the intersection of CrossFit podcast and YouTube. Like all these things were rising at the same time. We happened to just combine them, and I think we're actually and that happened on the back end of a recession. So I think that where we're at right now is everything feels a little dead.
yeah,
There's not a lot of there's a lot of innovation happening, but it hasn't quite gr- caught yet. But fast forward 2 years from now, there's a lot of projects that are happening right now, which is why I like being a part of a lot of different projects, because one or most of them will catch, because when money starts flowing again, it's going to get really interesting. But every bust, there's a boom that follows that, and all the innovation starts right now.
do you have any inklings as to what some of those things might be based on your trend spotting?
Um, I mean, the most obvious one is AI. I don't know
Yeah,
why more people aren't just all over that, but yeah, I feel I just sent out an email a couple hours ago to my list about. I think I posted on Instagram as well about how I feel like I'm a teenager again when AOL came out, and I'm like getting in the chat rooms. I'm 41, and like I started building websites when I was in high school and stuff. I just thought it was the coolest thing to be on the internet, and I find myself having the same experience with some of these AI technologies. I'll be on my computer. My fiance, she was out of town for a week, and I was up late every night, not realizing what time it was because I was stuck in some rabbit hole. And so um, I have, and I don't think anybody knows what that's going to do specifically, but what I see, um, the cool thing I see happening is I can now launch a dozen projects. I think I'll launch a dozen projects before the end of the year because I can with AI. And so the ability to test a concept and see if it's viable or not, the speed at which we can do that that's gonna create a lot of new innovations. So I think people should be learning how to leverage it in order to test ideas.
No doubt. I feel like I was actually tinkering with some AI. And yeah, I usually do it every Monday, or a few times a week. But we'll call it a generic email blast in nutrition, right? Because it's been written before, and then they can come up with some copy, and I have to write it in a particular copy, and it takes a lot of thought process. But the robot can do it in half a second. And as I finish the email, I then asked it to code for an app that I thought would be useful for myself because I don't want to pay for a premium service. And it spit it all out. And I just was like, all right, well, what's the next step? I don't know all the pieces yet. And I know what you're talking about. Like, it's cool to see this evolution of the internet where before it was like you couldn't really, unless you learned how to code or you learned the necessary steps to do HTML or all those steps, you couldn't really have a tangible thing in a day. And you just told me you're probably doing one a month, right? So your rabbit hole is probably like, I can probably get like an end product by the end of the night,
I launched two websites, basically two brands that were they had a little bit of something going on in the last week. So I launched a couple different sites. Well, one site will be launched probably later tonight or in the morning. I launched one this morning. I was just able to throw it together so fast with the help of AI. Using it for something that you're already familiar with, I think, is the way to go. Like, because I'm not in the app business. I have it code an app like yourself. I don't know what to do with it after I have it coded. I don't know what those steps are. But if I'm talking about marketing or anything media related, dude, I can tell if it's good or not. Like, I can't analyze code and see if it's good, but I can go, oh, this marketing copy is pretty good. This is how I would improve it. Now I know how to prompt ChatGPT better to get a better response because I know what I'm looking for. I find that process to be incredibly interesting. So that instead of me just taking what it gives me and editing it, is reprompting it to see if I can make it give me exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And it's trippy.
Question for you there. So obviously, like, each chat is like its own room on GPT. Are you working on coding each individual room as if it's its own, like people talk about it being like its own entity, almost like its own, like, kind of conscious space? Or is it just like all the conversations that you've had, can they like tie together? Because you're probably using it maybe even more than myself.
I don't think they can tie together it's a little clunky still because even inside of the same thing, I'll want it to forget something. So I forget what we were talking about so that we could. So I would say navigating, keeping up with what I want it to remember, what I want it to forget is still not quite there yet. So I have a lot of I start a lot of new conversations. What I'm doing is when I have a series of prompts that I really like, I say I have a little library of prompts of, oh yeah, when I'm looking for this, I want to snag this prompt over here.
Interesting.
That's really cool. I mean, AI is going to be super powerful. I think everyone's going to have to use it or look at it or leverage it somehow because they'll be kind of dust in the wind. Can you cover like the 12, maybe like without going too deep into the IP, but like you're doing 12 projects this year. I know you said, hey, I had 2 brands. Can you kind of cover like what you're using the AI for and like what you feel some of these projects that you're doing over the next year is like, without obviously getting too deep? I don't want anyone to touch into it too much.
First step is market research, and that's actually a really cool use case for ChatGPT, because I've also connected ChatGPT to my web browser. So there's a Chrome extension, so I can have it search the web live. I can give it specific sites. I can let it go loose and find its own sites if it wants. I can have it build me buying personas. I can basically tell it what kind of product and some very limited demographic information, and it'll build out, an ideal client avatar. It'll come back with, John, who's 28 years old, lives in Colorado Springs, and so on and so forth, and is interested in this, and his budget for this type of product is this budget range. I go, wow, this is really impressive. So just, you can do that in 5 minutes. Whereas I've worked with marketing firms before where we sit down and going through the market research phase takes weeks. So just taking weeks and turning it into 5 minutes is interesting. And I can make little tweaks and get different buying personas built out. So that's like one use case. So if I have a product idea or there's a specific group of people that I'd like to target, then it can help me identify the product or service that's going to most align with them. What I really like it for is being able to basically have the idea, figure out the person, collect. I do a lot of like collecting data specifically from the ideal customer. So I do a few interviews, have those interviews transcribed, use their exact language, build out a sales page, and then throw the sales page out there and see how it operates, see how it performs. And because most things, no matter how much market research you do, you don't really know the truth about whether it's good or not until someone gives you money for it. So I really that's my primary role in business anyway, is getting a product market fit. And then once there's a fit and it's selling, I'm personally not that interested in anymore.
That's what is like something you can speak upon that you are excited as a product? Do you like products more, or do you like the service side more? Because I know you've done helping out coaches. Like, are there products that you're excited about right now that you really want to get hands on, or is it just like, hey, set it and forget it? Like, what's the style that you like to have once it's on the market?
I have my most experience with service based. So like the coaching, running gyms, running coaching companies, training companies. That's just what I have the most experience with. It's super high profit, low headache. It's a beautiful business to be in. So I like service-based businesses. Like I said before, I'll be getting into a brick and mortar with some physical products here before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm partnering with somebody who is, got a lot of experience with product.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think for me it matters too much whether it's product or service, because a lot of the marketing is very similar. The principles apply equally.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. And I know like you like the service and stuff like that, and now you have this project coming up. When did you decide to take the plunge? Or better yet, like, what is it that you're excited about now in the service part? Because I know in the Sovereignty.codes, it's like a project that's coming up for you. Reading into it, what I saw really was helping people find their mission, right? And I know you spoke about finding their mission. What is it about that is so appealing to you, helping people find their mission?
I think most people are unhappy or discontent with their current position because they just aren't resourced enough. So the program is really about increasing someone's resources, so in their resourcefulness. And so most people are living in a state of survival, which if you're in a state of survival, you guys probably already know this, but if you're living in a state of survival, your ability to really create something is diminished or maybe even impossible. So my job with that program is really to get people so well resourced internally and externally that what ends up happening by the end of the program is that they go, this is the thing that I've always wanted to do. I haven't been doing it, but now that I feel physically resourced, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and environmentally resourced, oh, I can do anything. And so it's we don't spend the whole program going, oh, let's journal about finding your mission. We don't do that at all. Like, it's really, there might be a couple prompts in there that might peel back at that, like a couple journal prompts, but it's really about elevating where they're at, and then they can see the landscape so much more clearly, and it just pops. It becomes obvious. I enjoy that process because I know it so well. So I basically, it's the culmination of everything that I've done. Like, I've done the fitness, I've done the wellness, I've done the emotional programs, I've done the mental programs, and the relational programs too. And there's really a place where I go, nobody that I can see is able to tackle all of this at once, because if you work at one part of your life, like, most people are really good at one thing. They're either good at the internal self or the external self, or they're really good at relationships, or they happen to live in a really positive environment, but they rarely are excelling in all four of those areas. So I split up into internal self, external self, internal we, external we. And I also noticed that people, when they get too focused into one of those areas, the other areas start to fall apart, or the highest leverage thing they could do for their life is not. So if you've been doing physical fitness and focused on your physical health your whole life, the highest leverage item for improving your life isn't more fitness. It might be some reflection, or it might be improving your relationships, or and then also having an environment that supports all those things as well.
No doubt. those balance of those four areas, do you find, so like the goal is to create a well-rounded individual amongst all four, or do you find that you should still kind of, or is your goal to move from one section to another? Like, what is that supposed to look like?
I wouldn't say there's a goal to do to move anywhere. It's more of giving people the space to see where they want to put their attention. So I'm not there going, oh, you need more attention over here because of this. But we bring a new awareness to it. So a lot of times they've been in the physical path, and we start taking them down the relational path. And that is just so exciting because there's so much novelty there now, and they're experiencing a ton of benefits. And that actually might be, like, if you're trying to improve your fitness in some way, improving your relationships might be the thing that improves your fitness, because now you're experiencing less stress, you're more well rested because everything's much more peaceful. And so, it's more about getting people to look at all four of those areas when they run into a problem or a challenge or an opportunity in life, and go, oh, am I considering all four of these things, or am I getting tunnel vision?
Yeah. Awareness is always key. I think I like that you're letting kind of a choose your own destiny. Now you know of all four, you probably identify in one category over another, and then where do you see yourself wanting to improve upon, and then starting there. I think, you're right. I mean, a lot of people in my eyes of coaching, you have to prompt them with the right, just like ChatGPT, you got to prompt them with the right questions to bring out what they actually want, right? Through your coaching, like they sought you out for a reason, and that might be the niche like you described earlier, and obviously you niched in fitness and nutrition and all those things, and then you have to kind of give them what they actually need by diving deeper. um you know.
Yeah, I think people have their unconscious desires that they may not even recognize, but through good coaching, we can pick up on it and then move the needle on some things that they weren't even aware they wanted.
Yeah, I'm like trying to position even my own head. Like obviously I spent just like yourself. Obviously you came out of, you said the Navy, right?
Yeah.
So um I wasn't in the Navy, but came out of college, and that's where I found CrossFit 10 years ago. And then it's always been about the external improvement. And now it's more of like an internal improvement, but still giving back to that community because it affected me so positively.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't know where I'll be in 10 years, another decade of quote fitness like yourself. It's probably like, well, how do I reach more people to then make more impact inside of that community as a whole, versus like me being the person, bootstrapped to it. Yeah, you got me thinking kind of deep right now. I like that. Yeah. but I see your evolution, because like, I mean, 20 years old, what the hell do you know, right? Like not a whole lot. You're trying to find something that's
Almost
fun.
nothing.
Yeah.
I still don't know.
That's why we have Chat GPT. We got to ask this guy.
Yeah. I mean, but so you mentioned a fiance. Is it just you and her? Do you guys have like kids, or do you have dogs or anything else that you have to like?
No, just the
Also
two
take
of
care
us.
of?
Just
Just
the
the two
two
of
of
you?
us. Yeah, we for a while there we were traveling. The last decade of my life, I've been traveling more than I've been at home. And that's actually changed in the last 4 months. I've been at home for 4 months now, which is crazy. I'm not even itching to go anywhere either, which is even stranger. And so we're talking about getting a couple dogs. We figure we need to have at least 2 at a time so they can tucker each other out. But yeah, it's just the two of us. We're both very focused on career stuff, and we have aspirations for children. So we're looking forward to getting married and having kids.
Oh, a new adventure unfolds, my friend. It's just I went backwards
Yeah.
with this. Started with kids first, like an idiot.
I think you did it. I don't know. I don't think there's a right way. I think that waiting as long as I have to have kids is not necessarily the best thing. Like, like I have a lot of friends that are my age that their kids are a little bit older, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna be getting started. I'm 41. I'm gonna be getting started, and like, I could have done it sooner. I mean, I've been set up well enough to have kids. I'm mature and all. I've got all the things I need. Probably the last 5 years at least. But yeah.
Yeah, but you left no doubt in like travel or career endeavors or building things. And I think it kind of goes both ways. Like I'm passionate and fiery about building something now for my kids, and you've like, I already kind of know or have a new perspective because of what I've done so far. So then you can usher them in with your knowledge base right now, which is like you just said, there's no right or wrong. It's just sometimes you just get hit with the right person at the right time. And
Yeah. Well, I didn't think I was gonna
it's,
have any kids.
well,
I
she
had no
changed that.
plans for children.
This good
My
woman in
my
your life.
Did she
Yeah,
change
she
it?
did.
Yeah.
She changed me. Yeah, 6 months into the relationship, I was thinking, "Oh my god, I wanna give this woman a baby. What's going on? I've never had that feeling before." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that, like, men could get baby fever, but I guess you can."
It's it's funny you say that, because I kind of felt the same way. And I mean, I always kind of felt like I wanted it, but you just don't know where the circumstances are going to take you. And when you're just like, am I feeling like I know exactly like that baby fever? It's like this person, I could see that. I could see the maternal drive and that instinct. And I think it's a really cool thing, and like you just said, your friends, and you witness something a little bit different in their relationship with a kid. I mean, finding new purpose in something new, right? Like you just said, your kids are always going to give you a new challenge. I'll give you that, you know, like maybe that's exactly what someone with your mind needs, which would be, you know, super rewarding, always trying to be fulfilled. And I mean, the first 2-3 years, they can't communicate very well. So you're gonna pick up some new skill sets along the way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with transitioning out, like how'd you know the right time to step away from all the different endeavors you've done? Because you've exited what sounds like, I mean, sounds like a dozen businesses at this point, right? Like,
7.
obviously 7. Okay. So I wasn't far off. So how did you know? What was like the writing on the wall? Was it just a passion thing, or is there something else?
Mostly passion. In fact, there's some businesses where I see I could have left a lot sooner.
Mm.
So, um, it's I usually hang on a little too long until it becomes painful, and then finally let go.
What do you mean by that? When you held on for too long, was it just because is interfering with your personal life? The business wasn't growing. What was the pain?
My passion for whatever it is I'm doing starts to diminish, and that starts impacting the business. And I could do a better job. I see now where I could do a better job of identifying someone to take over while we're still peaking, instead of
Mm.
waiting for there to be a little bit of a decline and being like, oh shit, I need to get someone who cares more about this than I do.
Mm. Were you always playing like the CEO role, like that, the leader at the helm, or like I know that with the Shrug Collective, like there's a collective, but like with these other businesses, were you always like head honcho, and then like, oh, I have to figure out and delegate this? Like, what was the roles you always had?
Yeah, I've always been the head honcho. I'm the oldest of 5 kids too, so I think that plays a role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the third of 4, so like, so I'm kind
Yeah.
of in the middle. So I'm kind of like trying to raise and say all boats. I did want to ask you, like, in terms of that passion, then, like, I know talking about the passion of like, hey, helping people grow, but like, how did you come into that? Like, finding those missions. I reading into what you've done, you've done so much self development. Can you kind of go into the areas of self-development that you've tried? Like, I know you're like, I've tried the plant medicines, I've done the travel, I've done the relationship. What were the ones that were so impactful for you that helped you find that clarity?
Um, so many. I was on like I was like on a it's about a 5-year period where I just did personal development program after personal development program, reading the deepest spiritual texts I could find, going to a leadership training, going and drinking ayahuasca. Um, I it's it's hard to pinpoint any one thing because each thing had a really great gift, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
the things that I encountered early had the biggest impact because that was when I had the greatest amount of potential left on the table. So in the beginning, the thing that really kicked it off was I was really hyper focused on improving my business, and I was attending some conferences, and there's a lot of personal development stuff being introduced at these conferences and meeting really cool people. And then I was introduced to psychedelic mushrooms, and my first psychedelic mushroom experience really made, the biggest pivotal change in me. That's when the lights came on. I realized that I'd been stuck in this one perspective my whole life. And there were 2 really big lessons I got from that experience. One was that I'm really responsible. I got the felt experience of being responsible for where I'm at in life, period. There's no one to blame but myself, no one to reward but myself, and my choices really matter. And the other one is that I had been a terrible listener, and if anyone disagreed with me, I just wrote them off as stupid and wouldn't listen to what they had to say. And
Wait,
so I became a good listener after that.
a bad listener in the business? Because I was like, I feel like you had thousands of episodes on podcasts having like top guests on. I'm like, this guy has to listen to these folks.
Well, I'm very good at I've been very good at collecting information. So, but I wasn't listening to the person.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was there just to get the data and move on. And
oh.
and this was 2013. So this was about a year and a half into Barbell Shrug. So I had, less than 100 episodes in at that point. And you could probably, if you were to go look at, like, say, episode 50 compared to episode 150, you'd see a different mic podcasting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're saying
I totally agree.
not for the better growth or for the better?
For the better,
those
for
100
sure.
episodes? For the better. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Way more present with the guests, able to take the conversations deeper. Was able to hold multiple perspectives at once. Hold the perspective of the audience, hold my own curiosity, and be watching the guest and my co-hosts and just keeping up with everything.
Yeah, that is I do find that unusual. I find that, like, you probably recognize this. The speech pattern that you use here is different than if we turn off record, right? It's because you're addressing us, but also simultaneously this fictitious audience that we don't know how many people will be there. And it's you're like, how do I tell the story to, like, influence them, but also stay true to what it is / just tell it as it is. It's why I kind of really enjoy this. It's a very different level of thinking versus one-to-one health coaching or psychological coaching or business coaching or anything, really, because you have to put yourself in multiple shoes all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned data and analytics. Do you find that numbers are easy for you?
I don't even know what that means.
Let me rephrase the question.
Can you give me an example? Yeah.
You're like, I'm getting the data and then I'm getting out. So to me, I'm a math guy. So I think, like, X number of ads equals this many sales, right? Like, if you put it into a marketing perspective, is that the data you're saying, or data as in, like, their key point? Like, they gave me their key point, now I'm out.
Oh, I got the key point. Like,
Okay.
I'm like harvesting. I'm after I go, okay, how does this apply to me? Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
How do you turn that into a more of a perspective shift? Because I feel like there's always, like, one lesson we learn from each person that's, like, very impactful per episode. But how do you extract more? Because you're saying that you kind of found a way to do that. What allowed you to listen deeper?
Yeah. So there's, like, different stages of understanding. I should probably coin this at some point because I've never heard anyone talk about it like this before. But first is the methods. So this is really easy to analogize to, say, fitness and CrossFit. Somebody discovers CrossFit, they fall in love with a method and they learn the method, or they find some coach who's got a method and they're like, oh my God, this method is the best method. And so that's someone who's new to something, they're focused on the methods. But then if you stay in it longer, then you start studying principles. And the principles is why the method works. It's like, oh, the stimulus we're introducing is high force and high speed and high power. And there's a combination of these things. And when done in the right combination with so on and so forth, then we get this result. And so the questions in the early stages of something is, what's the method? People in business, they come to me and they're like, I need help with my business. I say, great. And they're asking method-based questions. They're nowhere even close to asking questions about principles. And then, because principles are few, you actually don't have to know as much if you understand the principles and all these methods. So taking fitness as an example, I interviewed 100, 200 people about their method. How do you get stronger? How do you get faster? Whatever. Did the same in business. And then it got into more of like a, what are the principles? Okay, the underlying principles. I'm like, they're all doing the same stuff. Like everything that works is following these particular principles. And then there's a layer below that or beyond that, which is how are they being? How is this person showing up from moment to moment? And that makes them special. A coach that's able to get their athletes to perform, a businessman who's able to get their business to perform, an athlete who can perform, what is their perspective? What is the perspective they're holding in that moment? And so if you're looking at principles and perspective and how they're being, the being piece is infinite. There's this, if you can start dialing in and interviewing somebody in person, this is even easier to do in person because you got the energetics of what's going on. There's all this subconscious mapping going on. And one of the things that I've learned to do is be open, like open up the field and just absorb their being. There's one guy that we interviewed, for instance, Julian Pinot, and a lot of people will cite that podcast as like one of the best podcasts they ever listened to that we did. And that guy was incredibly special. The way he was being, the way he showed up. I mean, we hung out with him for an entire day. Like it was from sun up to sundown, and we didn't want to say goodbye. And so we harvested as much of the principles and methods we could for the show, but then once the cameras were off, it was like it's like, dude, just how do you run your life? Like what do you think about all these types of things? And I don't know if I answered your question, but that's been my approach.
Yeah, it's funny because we did another episode earlier with somebody, and I feel like we botched it a little bit. But then, and he kind of mentioned something along those lines of like absorbing the essence of the person, like you just described, and like it may not be able to be possible in a 1 hour window, realistically, right? But like that's the art form, or that's like how you can get better, is to find ways to ask the right questions and let you tell the story and take us on a journey in the interview setting. With like if it's just us two, it's a different cadence. And if it's just like the collective, it was probably a different cadence versus an interview. But that's honestly, to me, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, it makes it fun because, how can we get that essence out? How can we eke out every little bit of Mike today in the short window we have? Because, you have 20 years of info you're trying to displace in 1 hour. It's a tough thing. But you mentioned Julian. So he obviously did something incredibly well in that time that he was there. Was it like, what was his energy like during that day? Not only podcast, but like after the show was off, like how was it perceived by you? And did it change anything for you moving forward?
I really appreciated his philosophical approach. Like it was obvious that the way he was thinking about training is how he thought about life, and he had done well in considering things, and there was just a level of depth there that anything that he said, he had considered deeply. And most people talk a lot, but haven't considered, what they're saying deeply. They're just kind of like spouting off. And I don't listen to people who I know they haven't thought about what they're talking about very much. But he was somebody who I go, oh, I could think more deeply about other things too, that I may have. Hang around someone like that will go, oh, there's an area of my life in which I haven't applied these principles. Paul Chek was another one of those.
Yeah, Paul. I had a friend, Paul Chek. I think he spent some time with him back in like 2015 in one of his like cohorts or something like that. And when he came back, because he was one of the coaches, he came back. It was like, I think it was like a different person.
Yeah.
It was a very different person. What was your perspective with Paul Chek? Like, just trying to bridge it from Julian to Paul. What was it about them that you saw? Was it the way they asked the questions? Was it like the way that you said considered things? Was it how they considered certain topics in the health and wellness space? Like, what was it about them that was just like, man, I'm curious about this?
They live it. They absolutely live it, and it works. So the results are obvious.
Yeah,
Physically or
yeah. I mean,
mentally? Both? Like,
across the board. Like
yeah.
when you're around Paul, like the thing, it took me. I left Paul's house and went home and spent about 6 hours with him the first time I met him. Went home and I was just spent. He was just talking the whole time, and I was curious. I was asking questions, and he was just one question, 20 minutes of just giving me information. And it was just so much I couldn't even digest it. And I go to bed and I sleep, I dream, I digest. I wake up the next morning and I go, oh shit. I don't think I've ever met anyone so honest in my life. And the reason he was so honest is because he actually knew himself, and he was willing to just talk about anything and everything about himself that people may judge or not judge or whatever it is. And this is just how it is. And you could tell that he was not really attached to the other person's response to his honesty.
I know some people like that. It rubs people the wrong way at times, though, too.
For sure.
Yeah.
They're my favorite people. Just watch them go into a room with some of these people and watch people squirm.
They're brash, but they're brilliant and brash, but they ask the right questions. And you're describing to me my buddy Zach, and he asked those questions. And Seamus, obviously, we brought him on the podcast last week, and I think Seamus, he kind of attacked Seamus a little bit in a good way.
Oh, it was great.
But
I loved it.
But it led to a great conversation, and I think it's through that you create some nuance that opens up a conversation. Maybe you have two opposing camps, right? And I'm sure you've been there, like CS, CrossFit, whatever certification here, and then like people are just like, oh, my methodology is better. Literally, somebody was berating CrossFit pull-ups yesterday in my Instagram, and then he's sending messages in our group thread of him hitting a bench press today. I'm like, I was like, why do I care like about either of them? I don't, one of them was just an event that I did, and the other one is you hitting a PR. It's like, why does it ultimately matter? And the fact that people with fitness could be so polarizing like politics is so funny to me, because fitness is just fun to me. To me, it's a mental and stress reliever above all else.
Yeah. Brings me joy.
Do you still do a good deal of like lifting, or what do you do for your fitness endeavors these days?
Yeah. Actually, I went easy for about 8 years. So, I left weightlifting due to an injury, and then thought I was going to bounce right back into competition, and that didn't happen. And during that time of recovery, I had some realizations through some reflection that I had been competing for the wrong reasons, or competing for reasons that mostly because I hated myself. and I needed to prove to myself I was good enough. And during that time, I really got into a space of investigating, where I hate myself, and started looking at where I could practice more acceptance and love of myself. And as I did that, my body started to heal, and I realized that I had zero interest in competing again.
Mm.
And because what was driving that was mostly insecurity. And then because I started loving myself, I realized that I had really jacked my body up. I
Yeah.
had way more healing to do than I had originally thought. I was like, oh, I just need to heal this one injury. It's like, no, you injured that because your breathing patterns are off. Okay, I need to redo my breathing patterns. Okay, your shoulder's like this because of your jaw, and your jaw's like this because of your teeth, because of a lifetime of stress and gritting and all this stuff. And so in the last like 4 months, I have gotten to a place where I can lift weights again without pain. So the
Mm.
first time I can lift weights without pain in like 20 years. And so, because I just would power through it previously. So now I've repaired my body well enough to where I've started training again, and I'm 10 weeks in, and
Mm.
yeah, loving it. Nothing crazy, but I'm deadlifting, I'm bench pressing off a Swiss ball, doing a lot of crawling, and yeah, I'm still pretty strong. I enjoy pumping the iron, hop in the cold tub, lift weights, hit the sauna, go home.
That's so powerful. I love that. Like 20 years of lifting and then just having to heal yourself. My question is, if you kind of touched on something, you destroyed your body because of insecurities. What were some of these insecurities, if you don't mind me asking?
I just had a there's one insecurity was I was terrified of being considered weak, and that was
Mm.
just something from childhood. Like it's like I was in competition with my brother. I needed to be strong in order to earn my father's love, and uh, the only way that I could be loved is if people saw that I was strong. And of course, if that's a subconscious belief running in the background, no matter how strong you get, it'll never be satisfied because you're the only one that gets to decide when you're strong enough.
I just took a deep breath there because I just I just resonate with that so much. I competed up into wrestling like in my whole life doing jiu-jitsu, and I destroyed my body just like you. And it took graduating college, took like 4 years. I think it was just this last year alone of not lifting and doing like jiu-jitsu practice, not being hurt, my shoulder, my low back, my knees, and realizing you do have to do that acceptance. You do have to do that work, and you have to see what your body can do because it won't actually heal because you keep putting yourself in the predicament. You keep putting yourself in the predicament. What was some of the acceptance work that you kind of did? What did that look like? Was that like journaling? Was that, hey dude, you're okay? Talking to your younger self, like, hey, we're good, we're strong now. Like, what were you saying?
Um, there's a couple different retreats that I attended where it was like week-long immersives with somatic experiences and NLP and different modalities, some RET, rapid eye technology, going to Peru for ayahuasca, doing a little bit of 5-MeO. All those things contributed to being able to get to a solid point.
What is that, rapid eye tech? What is that?
Yeah, it's basically like you want a light flashing, flickering at a specific frequency um, as you're letting go of certain beliefs and then reprogramming in the beliefs you want that support you.
Which of those, like, I know you've done a multitude of those. which one of those was like the most like intense? Was it, like you said before, was it the one where you're at the beginning of your journey because it was so impactful because there was so much potential, or did you find other techniques to be beneficial no matter what you were? I know you said something about, psychedelic mushrooms. Like, what is it about those things that are so powerful to go from one shift to the next?
I can't attribute to any one thing. It's all about the stack, to be honest. There's people fall in love with a single modality, but you stack 3 or 4 at a time. So it's hard to say, but
Yeah.
I think that there's exponential effects from. I would do like the RET with mantras that I recorded on my own while microdosing, having followed a somatic experience the week before around that specific thing. So there's like a whole system, and this is where scientific research has been very difficult to study these types of things because the way it works, everything needs to be isolated. So studying stacks is incredibly expensive, time, money, expensive, and there's only so much research that can be done at a time. So a lot of the stuff that I've done has been either my own intuition, or there have been coaches or therapists that have put stacks together that they think will work. And yeah, I mean, this is part of what I do in my consulting is I help create stacks for people to make whatever they're doing to be most effective.
Got it. And you're probably doing like a really in-depth analysis of that person, where they're at in their life, the personality type, and kind of going, okay, like this one might work. Nah, not really. We'll do this one.
Some stacks work for everybody. Some people need to be introduced to certain things differently, but yeah, nothing's for everybody.
Okay.
Like I think that there is most people could have a guided psilocybin experience, a light one, and 99% of the population is going to come out better for having done that.
Yeah.
But I think that probably less than 1% of the population should do ayahuasca.
Don't go down for real.
I've heard that it's pretty, I've heard ayahuasca experiences are pretty intense.
It can be.
From what people tell me, like you have to be comfortable with like shitting yourself, essentially, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
that's nothing compared to what's happening internally. People are always afraid of, like, everyone's like, I'm afraid of throwing up, I'm afraid of shitting myself. I'm like, man, that's the least of my worries going in.
Oh, man. So that's it's a journey in many ways, and I think I screwed myself up personally because I did some mushrooms as a teenager, and probably took way too much. Had no idea how much we even did. Could have been laced with something for all I know, and it like has been the trigger of my anxiety for my 20s. It's been pretty tough, but I've also learned that anything that's caused anxiety, you have to almost kind of do the hair of the dog with it. Like the only way to truly overcome it is probably get back into it or be guided, like you just mentioned. So I wonder if my wife will kill me. So, but probably not, but I would love to combat that demon.
People who do those things younger in a non-guided way, they have a relationship with that substance that can be rewritten. But I wouldn't just go, oh, it'll work for you the same way as it works for somebody who's never done it before, who's the same age. I'm fortunate that I didn't discover these things till I was in my 30s, because I was being exposed to the right people and the right messaging at the time for me to be primed to have the best experience possible. And people I know who did a lot in high school just to party, like a lot of people who do, say, like a lot of LSD or MDMA and psilocybin in a party environment where they're mixing with alcohol and all that kind of stuff. I usually tell them not to bother with things they used to do and just go do ayahuasca, because that's going to bring the ceremony back to your whole life. And it's hard to do anything unceremonially after that point.
Yeah, you're right, because it's like it's always the initiation of whatever it is that is part of the start of the journey or the awakening, right? Like hard to awaken something that's been there before. And all I remember is I stared at a ceiling fan for 4 hours. So,
Yeah, you probably got
Oh,
something
man.
good out of it.
I did. It was a very, I think it made me realize that journey was, the mind is the most powerful thing that you can manifest and control. As if looking back at it, it's like anything that my mind could envision something turning into, it like transformed, right? Oh,
Yeah.
that's a picture of a boat in the water and I can feel the water on my face, and it's a very weird thing to go back to because it obviously I actually had like a trauma with it where I blacked out completely because I freaked myself out because I looked at my hand and it looked like it was the opposite way. So it was like this hand was on this hand like that.
Yeah.
And if I just remember waking up from being blacked out and it I mean, maybe it's turned me into the person I needed to be for today because I made that spiritual journey at a young age. Because I don't touch a lot of stuff as a result, and I don't know. Everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We all make our choices, and those choices lead to something, and
Yeah.
it's always perfect.
There's lots of those stories and journeys. I'm sure everybody can relate where they've done something and the outcome during it was not what you wanted, but you grew from it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
100%.
A lot of things.
I mean, 8 years off though, and then recovering yourself, like yourself, right? Like your internal self, but externally, did you have to put in work as well? Or was it just all that time off let you refocus as you got into these last 10 weeks? Right? Because
Oh no. I mean, I was moving every day. Just
yeah,
wasn't training heavy.
gotcha.
Yeah, a lot of corrective exercise. My jaw was so out of whack. I actually needed to get my teeth fixed because the teeth were shaped in a way that was throwing the jaw off. And no matter how much jaw work I had done, I needed my teeth to be fixed in order to make that happen. So these are all veneers. So I just basically damaged all my teeth so much from all the gritting, and I used to fight and they're just jacked up. And so that was causing neck problems. That was basically the last thing that I needed to fix in order to be able to train heavy again.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of things.
Wow.
What was it with your neck? What was going on with your neck exactly? Because what happened with the jaw, the neck? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, so like the jaw, I want to say connects at C1, C2, and if you're biting down harder on one side than the other, then it creates what's the word I'm looking for? Shearing. And you lose power because you simply can't even cause like my left side can't fire as hard as my right side. It's because there's shearing at the spine, and so there's just not a clear connection. And so as you can imagine, now you get overdevelopment of certain things, and then also the way that my lower jaw had fallen back, and that was impeding the airway, so I wasn't getting as good a sleep. And then it was sending pain all through the front of my neck and down my shoulder.
Oof.
So just fixing the teeth by itself. So every session, as we were getting my teeth adjusted, I would have my buddy Alex, who's a NST, come in and adjust my atlas. So I'd get an atlas adjustment right before they would adjust my teeth, so that my teeth would cause my atlas to be on straight, and that way I could then after that procedure, basically all my neck pain went away and my power output went up, my sleep got better. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to that.
Dang. Think it's just went right to the root of the problem instead of like trying to fiddle and fart around with it. Because I've had that before with clients. I've heard that before too, like fixing the teeth or fixing something. And I'm like, as a wrestler, like, oh, we could do some neck exercises, like, iron neck or like neck work. And it's like, no, sometimes, you know, you really got to get down to the roots and actually fix the thing. You can't put strength on a dysfunction. It'll probably mess it up even more.
Well, Alex just went on Luke Story's podcast and talked about that. He's Alex has basically made this his field of study. He's also a Czech level 4 practitioner. So he'd be worth talking about too.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that you were somebody that did that, because I've heard about that being kind of the root for a lot of people's problems, that, like, unbeknownst to them, the jaw, like, and I'm like, how real is that? And you're like, dude, I can attest to it being very real.
now that I've had my own personal experience, I can't unsee other people. I'm like, they're fucked up. They're fucked up. Like, I'm looking at everybody's teeth. I'm looking at their. I go, oh, I see that their jaw is off. Oh, look at their neck. Oh, look at the way they're walking. It's like, I can't unsee it now. Like, I know too much.
You're like the neck jaw whisperer.
Yeah. I see it in the mirror every day, the little imbalances, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin to fix it. But I never would have thought of starting at my jaw. But I can
talk to Alex.
I kind of have to. Now you have somebody that we're interested that's going to fix our teeth and our.
He's got a couple different dentists he's working with that are like super specialized and written books on this. And then he's like the NST guy that's come in to fill the gap to basically connect the manual therapist to the dentist. And so everyone's working together now.
Wow. Integrated approach.
Exactly.
Phenomenal.
Talk about a niche, bring it all back together at the end, right?
That's powerful. Well, I do want to be cognizant of your time, Mike. I know you've graced us so much with your presence, and really it's just an honor to be here. Kind of someone that used to be in my ear every day. Now I get to say, hey. Well, why don't you just kind of, as we're closing, just anything that you're excited for, just to finish up with your projects, where people can find you, and we'll definitely put them in the show notes for everyone.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. You can find me on Instagram at Mike_Bledsoe. I do have a program coming out called Sovereignty.codes. It's Sovereignty.codes is the site. 90 days of training where I'll take you through all 4 quadrants 3 times. And it's a lot of fun. Come hang out. That's all I got.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. We were super honored to have kind of to me, it's a podcasting OG, because I remember Game circa 2013 and seeing this, and it's kind of a full circle moment. So it's kind of cool. I was kind of geeking out when Seamus told me. So that was reliving 10 years ago, a decade ago. I feel old now. Thanks for that.
How do you think I
feel? This was great. And hopefully people, like you said, aligning with the newer meshes that you're at now, you're moving into this new facet, newer things to help more people with integrating different areas of their over. To me, it's an overall health kind of landscape, and I really align with that too. So thank you everybody for listening. Check out Mike and his new program. All the details are in the show notes, and we will see you all very soon.